Hi, I'm here at the Henry Ford Museum in the Greenfield Village for the annual Old Car Festival. This is actually America's longest running car show, and I've been coming here really since I was in the stroller. So let's go out and take a look and see what kind of cars are here today and just have a good time. All right, so this is just a little sampling of the cars that we've got here today. We've got teens cars over here. We got a whole line of trucks down there. We're gonna walk around and maybe hit some of the highlights. Let's start right off with something interesting. Here's an early version of a Holmes split boom that's mounted on the back of a Model T C-cab chassis. This is interesting because the Holmes split boom had a very long life and was patented very early. Ernest Holmes in 1913 pretty much invented the concept of the wrecker by mounting a pulley system on the back of an old Cadillac. The Holmes split boom was particularly useful for hauling cars out of ravines or deep ditches like you see here. Hey, as long as we're on the concept of wreckers, let's take a look at this one. This is a single boom Manly. This is mounted on the back of a 1928 Ford Model AA truck. Remember, the AA is the heavier truck version of the Model A. This one looks unrestored, has a lot of nice patina on it. Just a really good, solid-looking truck. Here's a 1929 Model A, but you can tell right away this one is just a little bit unusual. This has a snowmobile conversion with skis in the front and tracks in the back. This is actually a Super Snowbird conversion. This is a company that did professional conversions of Model A's and Model B's and worked all the way up into the 1930s. Really interesting truck. Right behind the snowmobile, there was a Model A Ford air compressor. This is actually a professional outfit. This is a Smith air compressor conversion. Smith supplied everything. All you needed to do is to supply your own Model A engine, and everything else came with the kit. One of the great things about this show is that the cars are able to freely drive around the village all weekend long. So wherever you go, you have the sights, the sounds, and the smells of these cars driving past you. It's just a wonderful experience the whole weekend long to see these things on the road. Here's something really unusual. This is a Model A, but it has two rear axles. Both rear axles are driven full-time, so this is actually four-wheel drive, the rear four. The details on just exactly why this created are a little bit sketchy, but they think that this was a factory prototype that fell into the hands of William Smith, who at the time was a shift supervisor at the Rouge plant. This has now been restored and is still in the hands of the Smith family. So we have provenance of it from 1930 till now. But really highly unusual truck here. So here's a story for you. This 1926 Ford Model T was used by a group of girls to crisscross the country on summer vacations from 1934 to 1942. They became known as the Gypsy Co-eds, and they eventually got to meet and befriend Henry Ford himself. Here's a picture of them with him. They continued to correspond, but after the car was retired, it went into slumber for 70 years before it was found completely unrestored. Now, it's been maintained in its original configuration, and here it is to this day, just as it was during those trips in the 1930s and 1940s. All the original graffiti on it still intact. Just truly a wonderful piece of history here. The car was known as the Silver Streak, and in 2012 it was photographed with two of the surviving Gypsy Co-eds and William Clay Ford. That's the great-grandson of Henry Ford. This car is just something else to see in person. Really just a great piece of the show. Here is a tulip-bodied Cadillac. I've always liked this design. It has this sort of swoopy lines to it, very organic. It's just a beautiful, beautiful car. I believe they only made this sort of body style for 2 years, 1906 and 1907. I think I might be wrong on that. Anyway, just a nice car. Ignore the fact that my finger is in the shot. My wrist is still broken, so I'm working with one hand. Cut me some slack. Come on. actually a large contingent of antique bikes here today also. Let's look around at some of the more interesting ones and see what we can see. So we'll start off with an 1870s bone shaker. This has the pedals directly attached to the wheel hub. Very early form of bike. I like this one. This one had kind of lever action going on here for actuating the drive. This one is about a 1920 Meade Ranger, which I found super interesting because I actually have one of these things disassembled in my garage. This may be the subject of a future restoration video, but I'm kind of into old bikes, and I have one. I just have to restore it and kind of put it together, but this is a really nice example. Here is a tricycle. This is a lady's bike that has a nice, interesting gear drive here. The tricycle was for the ladies' skirts. Here is a bicycle built for two. Once again, lots of space up there for the large Victorian skirts. Here's a couple of ladies demonstrating how these things work so that you can wear your full Victorian garb and still be able to ride a bicycle. There's a bicycle built for two so that you can go along with your husband or your boyfriend. Hey, you may have noticed those ladies on the bikes in period costume. I just wanted to mention that the Greenfield Village Old Car Festival is kind of a low-key cosplay event with not only participants but also attendees wearing period costumes for any cars 1932 and older. So anything from your smart 1930s business suit all the way back to high Victorian apparel. You notice that bike from the 1870s, so this goes way back. So if you are looking for an excuse or any kind of a reason, come next year in period costume and you'll be welcome there. Even if all you have is just a lace parasol, that's fine. Just kind of think of it as maybe a Victorian to early 20th century Ren Fair, and you're really not too far off. The point is just to come and have fun and enjoy the cars and the atmosphere. One of my favorites is the couple that owns a vintage limousine. The wife always comes dressed in her finest, and the husband comes dressed as a chauffeur. There he is there. I just think it's fun. Anyway, as fun as it is to people watch and take a look at the costumes, let's get back and take a look at a few of the cars. Hey, we have a section over here for race cars and speedsters. This is always fun because you can have anything from factory-built racers with actual track history to homemade go jobs to professionally built speedster bodies that would have been put together by individuals. The cars over here are just as unique as their owners. These would have been the hot rods of their day. So let's take a look at what we've got. Here, this one is based on a commercially available at the time race car body. This one is by Faultless. You would have needed to supply the Model T chassis, but then Faultless would have supplied the rest of the body. This particular example is being shown here today by a very famous race car driver. I'm sure you would know him. On this very nicely done 1913 Model T Speedster, you can see that the front axle has been moved forward just a little bit so that the body can slide down and behind it in order to lower the whole car down. Then the front suspension and front steering needed to be modified to accommodate that. Overall, a whole lot of work went into this. Here's a Model A-based Speedster. This one they've named Silly Babbitt, which I think is just a fun name, and I wish I'd have thought of it. Anyway, very nice speed setup, very nice look all around. This looks like just a really wicked fast car. One of my favorites that I've seen here before. Nice to see it every year. Each year the museum has a special display of their own cars, kind of along a theme. This year it's in a actual new building in the village. Well, new as in new to them. This is the old Detroit Central Market that was built in 1861. This operated from 1861 up to 1894 when it was moved over to Belle Isle and then used as a horse stable for years and years before falling into disuse. The museum bought it in 2003 and meticulously reconstructed it here. I think it's a great addition to the village. Here is a single-seat cycle car. This is a 1924 Micron monocar. This is here on loan from the Lane Motor Museum. Just a neat little car. Hey, electric cars are not a new thing. Here is a 1922 Detroit Electric. These things are always a favorite of mine because they have sort of a unique configuration. If you look in here, you'll see that there's actually a passenger seat facing rearward. These things are driven and steered from the back seat with a fold-down tiller there. A range on these things is actually pretty comparable to modern electric cars. They're not bad. Here's a 1923 Lincoln Model L touring car. This is just a big, powerful car. They had a good reputation back in the 1920s and in fact were used extensively by both police and gangsters during Prohibition. So if you look at this and you're thinking gangster car, you'd be dead on. Here's a 1910 Brush. This has sort of a unique feature. If you're thinking that that front axle looks like just a wooden beam, you would be correct. That is a wooden front axle. You can always tell those brushes from a mile away just by that axle. Hey, we had that electric car earlier. Now here's a steam car. This is a 1910 Stanley Steamer. This car actually did run on gasoline. They just used the gasoline to fuel a burner that generated the steam to make the car go forward. Later on, they switched to a more efficient kerosene system for the main burner. But in 1910, I believe they were still using just gasoline. But anyway, just a fascinating car. There you can see some pressure gauges. Here's a 1914 Pierce Arrow with the quintessential Pierce Arrow headlights kind of fared into the fenders there. Just a high-end luxury car here. Massive car, nice dash, nicely done. You can see you get your initials monogrammed in when you buy a Pierce Arrow. No expenses spared for you. Just a great car. Straight from France, here's a 1912 Renault with sort of a unique front end. You see the radiator sits behind the engine there. You see the same thing on early Mack trucks. It's kind of a unique feature. You can spot these things from a mile away. Here's a 1906 Ford Model N. This is a smaller car, debuted just a couple of years before Henry had his Model T. The Model T came out in 1908, so that's just 2 years in the future here. Some of the design features that you are going to see on the Model T are just starting to gel on this Model N. So it's a really interesting car to look at in detail. Just a nice car to see. Here's a 1905 air-cooled Franklin. Let's just listen to it run for a second here. Here's another pre-Model T Ford. This one is a 1905 Model B inline four-cylinder engine with the cylinders cast separately and copper water-cooled jackets around them. Just a neat early Ford here. So I was walking through the Henry Ford Museum later on in the day, and I spotted that same engine. I said, hey, that's the Model B engine. Anyway, this is a 1907 Ford experimental tractor where Henry Ford was starting to experiment around with farm machinery, and he used that same Model B engine in this tractor. Just in case you're wondering, here's a Ford Model A from 1903. Ford worked his way up through the alphabet, so we had an A, B, C, K, N, R, S. Not all the letters got to be actual production cars before he finally got to the Model T. The Model T was made for a number of years, and then finally in 1928 he came out with a new car that was such a radical departure that he started over again with the alphabet, starting with a Model A. So we had a Model A and a Model B. Here's one with the rear seats that's called a tonneau add-on. The earlier one didn't. Anyway, just a little quick thumbnail of Ford history there. Hey, here's a nice car. If you know your history, you might know the name Eddie Rickenbacker. He was a famous World War I American flying ace. And after the war, he helped found a car company, actually kind of a well-engineered car here. He named it after himself to kind of capitalize on his fame at the time. And as a symbol, he used his squadron insignia, the 94th Hat in the Ring Squadron. There it is right there. So here's a really nice example of one of those cars. Here's an interesting car with some nice graphics on the side. They're looking for scrap metal always. This is a 1920 Ford Model T Roadster pickup, but there's a few subtleties that are different than a normal Model T. That's because this is an Australian Model T. This is from New South Wales. Recently restored. The graphics are as close to the original graphics as they could get. Not all of them were legible, but a very well done restoration and an interesting car. We really don't see Australian Model Ts up here too often, so it's good to see it at the show. Here's a Cleveland automobile. These were made from 1919 up to 1926 as sort of the lower-priced companion to the Chandler as part of Chandler Cleveland Motors, before the whole thing was eventually sold to Hupp Motors, makers of the Huppmobile. And I totally did not make any of those words up. Those are all real companies. Here is a Sears high wheeler. I think this is from 1911, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. Anyway, yeah, this is from the Sears Roebuck catalog company. They really did sell these right out of the catalog. Here is a 1905 Ford Model F. This is yet another pre-Model T era Ford, and a nice one, too. Hey, here's another Detroit Electric. This one's got the hood up so you can see all the batteries that run this thing. And he's left his window down so we can take a little closer look at the interior. There you can see the front seats that face rear and the tiller that runs this thing from the back seat. Around back, we've got still more batteries. This thing's got a lot of batteries to make it go. Here's a nice 1915 Oakland. Oakland at this time was one of the four major General Motors brands. Eventually, Pontiac was introduced as a companion to the Oakland, and then when the Great Depression hit, Oakland was just phased out. Here's a 1910 International high-wheeler pickup truck. This is sort of a throwback design even at the time, when you consider that the Model T Ford was already in production by the time that this truck was built. The high-wheelers were sort of aimed at a rural crowd more used to wagons. Take a look at the details on this wheel. I really like the clamps on the spokes and the chain drive. Nice truck. Here's a 1912 Havers. This is sort of an obscure company. They were built in Port Huron, Michigan, only for a few years. This was a 1912. Just 2 years after this car was built, their factory burned down and they were really unable to recover, and they folded up shop after that. Anyway, it's an interesting car. It's got a six-cylinder Continental engine in there. Here is a 1926 Yellow Knight purpose-built taxi cab. Notice the headlights up on the cowl, but not down by the fenders. I really like the Knight-shaped coach lights there. Anyway, this is a purpose-built taxi cab using the Knight engine. And it's badged as a Yellow Knight, so this has always been a taxi cab. This was not another car that was converted over. Just a really nice looking car, and you really don't see these at all. Speaking of taxi cabs, here's a 1930 Dodge that has been, it was converted over to a taxi cab. Very similar livery. In fact, this is Yellow Fair Cab Company. Just another nice looking car here. 1951 Old Car Festival. I told you this was America's longest running car show, and here to prove it are all the badges from 1951 to present. Well, I've got so much material, I think I'm going to actually take a pause here and split this into two parts. So look for the Greenfield Village Old Car Festival Part 2 video coming hopefully very soon here. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you like my content. Hey, go down and leave a comment. Ask any kind of a question that you want. I'll try and help you out. Anyway, I'll talk to you later. Bye.